Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm David Moeller, and today we're tackling the challenge that every professional services organization knows too well: contract chaos. Before we jump in, please note that questions arise. You can put them in the chats. If we have time to address the questions at the end, we will. Otherwise, we'll reach out to you directly with an answer. So let's set the stage here. From MSAs and NDAs to SOWs and renewals, contracts are everywhere. But managing them manually slows everything down: deals, projects, and even client trust. To unpack this, I'm joined by two great guests: Zach Pines, VP of Partnerships at Intellistack, and Paul Winnick, founder and CEO of Coalescence Cloud. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. How are we today?
Doing great.
Doing great, Dave. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Great discussion. Great to get it out right in time for Agentforce World Tour New York City. We're going to dive right in here. So first, let's kind of think about framing this as like, this is the problem: contract chaos in professional services. Paul, I want to start with you. At Intellistack, we talk a lot about the contract chaos problem. Can you talk to us about what that actually looks like inside a professional services firm?
Yeah, 100%. The point of view being from one professional services firm to another, and regardless of whether it's, a firm in the accounting space or consulting of some sort that's non-technical or technical, right? Like, unlike the SaaS companies or some other industries, it's a space that is very much saturated, I guess, just with the amount of like the legal side of things. So many professional services firms are much quicker to bring on, internal legal headcounts. It's just the nature of the business. Deals are larger scale, larger dollar value than maybe, a SaaS deal or deal in another space. And so, but, the issue remains the same. It's the chaos of vendor contract. If I'm the vendor and I'm submitting this to the client has a sense of urgency to get this project rolling, but their legal team has challenges with prioritizing and so forth. So legal teams love to do things their way. That means on their time frame, but that also doesn't necessarily mean that they know necessarily which ones to prioritize and how. And so really bringing it into a more transparent process like CLM enables us to do, and enables us to sort of like guide it along, push it through, remove some of the inefficiencies and the areas we get caught up in is a game changer.
So what I'm hearing from you, Paul, is it's not just a paperwork issue, right? People think like contracts are annoying, they get misplaced, but what you're describing is a true business bottleneck. Is that a fair characterization?
Absolutely. Legal teams, especially in the professional services space, there's typically, an MSA, which is a lengthy document, and, these can range anywhere from, I guess, 10 pages single space to, I've seen 40 pages in some cases, followed by SOWs and so forth. And as far as how the MSAs goes, they're just, every legal team, every lawyer prefers for certain clauses to be stated in a certain fashion, and so that's where things get caught up, either rewriting or what have you. Either way, they're not focused on necessarily order of priority, order of significance from a value perspective, and so forth. It's more so just they have a queue, and it's not necessarily the most efficient, but it is a true bottleneck. Prevents the speed and the momentum on the client end from realizing value, as does it obviously impact revenue on the
Great. So I feel like we've painted the picture now. Contract chaos is everywhere. It's not just a paperwork problem. These are real business bottlenecks that are having real world costs associated with them. Zach, let's bring you in now. When people hear CLM, they're probably thinking, okay, this is just another legal tool. How would you explain what it really does?
No, I'd up level that, Dave, to this is about like optimizing business process, workflow. Legal is a critical stakeholder, but there's really many cross-functionally involved. You might think about it, there's someone kind of leading the let's call it the deal, the contracting. That could be a salesperson, that could be a consultant in the services firm. They're looking to get kind of standardized input and support from legal, possibly multiple legal team members if there's different aspects at play, like privacy, for example, could be a more specialized legal resource. And then wanting to not just track and manage the initial agreement, but what happens when the agreement is finalized and how is that managed ongoing? The renewal process, assessing risk around the agreement. So these are all things that can be made more efficient, and where I've been really impressed with our approach, both like product wise and with partners like Coalescence, is being able to solve it by looking at it as improving a business process, moving it to digital, making it more efficient. And I think, it benefits everyone to kind of up level looking at it from a more narrow focus to a more broad focus that way.
100%. Sorry, I mean, I just want to kind of like piggyback on that. Like, I 100% agree. The key is visibility, right? And also just putting things, one of the great things of putting business processes into a system and having it somewhat overseen or pushed along by a system that provides visibility and so forth is otherwise that the alternative is no concrete timelines, no oversight, no visibility, and so forth. In the case of a salesperson, they are working urgently to hit month end, quarter end, what have you, but everyone sort of checks themselves and recognizes I'm not the only deal in the pipe. I'm not the only account exec that's trying to close this deal before month end, before quarter end. So who am I to prod legal along? And usually legal just, you can't chase them down. You can't really get through to them, right? Like that's just, it's a more narrow sort of connection point there. So by creating this sort of visibility, transparency for both sides, not only does it just naturally create that dialogue, that collaboration, it helps all the sides involved.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing this correctly, it sounds like at a very high level, we're bringing structure and transparency to what's traditionally been kind of a black box, right? I mean, you think about, contracts, this is your revenue. There's lots of stakeholders involved in this process, right? It's not just legal. It's not just ops. It's not just sales. It's the entire organization. And if you are able to have a lens into what's happening, that's going to really streamline operations for a whole host of departments. Yes?
Yeah. And Dave, I look at it as there's top line benefit and there's bottom line benefit. By top line, I mean, as Paul said, this is about accelerating revenue. So legal processes by definition kind of sitting in between the ability to generate new revenue, close deals, sign contracts. There's also a vendor piece as well, but accelerating revenue. And then on the bottom line, it's like making resources more efficient. You can make your legal team, if it's an in-house team, external team, just more efficient through techniques like AI-based playbooks that make the review process more of a kind of review and verify than having to kind of manually kind of churn through that legal backlog that every business is facing.
100%. And just to also add to that, like I love the playbook component of it because from my perspective, as a business owner, as someone that's had to be in the legal back and forth quite a bit, and whether it's my attorneys or the clients or vice versa, it's more about throughput and speed of response, getting anything back, right? Like if the playbook indicates that this type of statement needs to be structured this way, it can automatically sort of make those modifications or provide that, right? Even the first send of the contract being templatized and being, generated as part of a playbook, having that out sooner, as soon as the client or the prospect is ready to start reviewing, that accelerates the deal cycle. It makes it more feasible to actually close it within a certain time frame. The sooner you can hit go the first time and start getting that responsiveness back and forth, it's a huge win. But furthermore, you're also just cutting down, the stuff that's just kind of annoying, the table stakes stuff that the attorney always has to redline.
Yeah, I like that you guys are also positioning this as not only a tool that increases efficiency, but a real business accelerator, a revenue generator. So that's a fun perspective on that. Paul, let's take this in the world of SFDC. Yeah, I know Coalescence Cloud works closely with Salesforce environments. How would you say CLM fits into that ecosystem?
Sure. So not only do we're Salesforce consulting partners, but we're also Certinia partners, which has a industry-leading PSA, professional services automation solution, ERP solution on the Salesforce platform. The reason why I mention this is because there are other industries that have sort of like a centralized business platform approach or solution to them, but I think that PSA has penetrated professional services more specifically and more deeply than some other industries, right? So having your operations hub and sort of the crossover from sales into project management. On the sales side, you can also do your resource planning and so forth. So there's the crossover and the handshake sort of between the processes of sales going into a project, delivering that project, invoicing and so forth, and then renewals or new opportunities, change orders and so forth, right? So that being seamless, there's a huge opportunity here for CLM to fit in and further create transparency. And the value I see on the PSA side is similar to that of the CLM side. It enables individuals in a different department, legal in this case, to have visibility and anticipate this deal coming to a point where they're going to have to start doing these sort of reviews. So either they can be more proactive and or they recognize where they are and who's relying upon them to move this forward, right? Same thing with deal size and so forth. Like typically lawyers don't really ask, how big is this deal? How big is this deal relative to others? When do you expect to close it? Like all of that is available otherwise. So this is kind of that missing piece that is such a big point of friction otherwise. And now I see sort of like a light at the end of the tunnel with being able to bring that transparency and accountability into the end-to-end process.
Yeah, and that data is, to your point, Paul, so leveraging data from the CRM to feed into the legal process, then outputs from the legal process back to the CRM. So it's a natural for, bidirectionally sharing data and ultimately making it actionable for the ongoing management of that account as well.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, so you're turning contracts from static PDFs into living data. That's a pretty powerful use case right there.
Totally agree.
You don't want your data buried in documents. Yeah,
No.
That's the strategy. Move away from data buried in documents to data you can put to work.
Well, no, so Zach, that's a great segue because let's bring this home about why it matters now, right? You've got folks at home listening they're still stuck in manual mode. Right? They have their data stuck in documents. So for that person who's tuning in today, what's the big takeaway? What's the revelation they need to take away from this session?
I think the pace of change right now in software and technology, what I love about this is it's a practical solution that can help you right now with partners like Coalescence. And I'll go back to, top line, bottom line, like accelerate revenue, remove internal bottlenecks and friction that you don't need to settle for anymore, and do so with kind of maximum internal efficiency, like removing the grunt work, making the legal professional actually higher value, not having to do as much the repetitive tasks. And ultimately actually making that legal professional, if you look at it as from an effectiveness standpoint, help them help themselves, be more effective, not having to do the manual work, and ultimately like being more productive as an employee or a third-party resource.
Yeah, it's these lawyers, you're paying them a lot of money, right? Do you want them working on the high value exercise, or do you want them doing a bunch of busy work? Paul, how about a closing thought from you? Zach outlined how CLM can really be a revenue accelerator. Tie a bow on this for us, will you? Why
Yeah, 100%.
time to strike now for the professional services?
I mean, it's more than just simply the revenue acceleration part. Like that's the search sense of urgency or the reason for urgency right now. But as far as even longer term implications, with AI and so forth, like we're living in a very real world of an AI transformation, revolution, whatever you want to call it, point. B2B is very challenging and is very much unlike, it's why Anthropic is doing well versus OpenAI, let's say, on the consumer end. The challenges are not, are basically every business is so unique, but also their data is just all over the place. So if you want to have a successful automation AI strategy, you need to be able to do your process mining or have those sorts of things available within a system, right? So from a now perspective, you can accelerate these deals just by transparency, by pushing them along, by having reminders or escalation points or whatever within Salesforce for these contracts to push them along in the background. But furthermore, you now have these data points. For example, how long does it take, from an opportunity changing to contract review from the previous stage to the document actually going out, and how long does the back and forth take? And now you can actually better forecast, well, this went out 5 days before end of quarter, chances are it's going to be in next quarter or so forth. So it improves forecasting and enables the business to better understand what good looks like from a contract closing perspective.
Perfectly said, gentlemen. And thank you both so much for joining. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Before we get out of here, I'm looking at the clock. We just got a couple minutes, but I saw one great question come in from Tara. And I'd like to get both of your thoughts on this. How do we make sure CLM doesn't just become another system for teams to manage? Who wants to tackle that first?
I could jump in, Dave. And I think essentially in this, no silos, no silos is the rule, meaning like we can't have standalone systems. So the key is identifying your key data sources. Salesforce is a natural as a CRM, as an interface for your salespeople, and making sure you've got a strategy where you've got kind of end-to-end workflows activated, enabled, tied back.
I mean, I think to hit the answer sort of on the head, not saying that Zeit didn't do that, but I think, yes, most systems feel like they require ongoing maintenance, ongoing investment, new headcount to administrate these things. But in this case, legal hasn't had a great building place, a building like a sandbox or whatever, build out their processes, their key components of what a good contract looks like, right? And so this gives them a place to build out these playbooks, and that doesn't have to be done day one to go live. This is something that they can keep incorporating in one at a time, right? Like they see this phrase or this section is something that they constantly redline. And so putting in that standard can take 30 minutes and you have that tackled going forward. It's simple enough. Intellistack enables that sort of building block ability within the system, so legal can build on it themselves on a going forward basis. I don't think it really requires the level of effort that maybe some other systems require. It's self-help and so forth. If you're a more established, larger practice with some of these cornerstones in place, like, the implementation might take a slightly larger effort, but it is something that builds on top of each other and provides incremental value with every new thing built into that playbook. Also reduces risks. I think this one is a simple one to sell from the perspective of ROI and ongoing ROI. And adjacent to sales and increasing sales velocity, like it's a no-brainer from my perspective. Like if there's one thing you can fix about your sales process now, this is something to execute on.
Excellent. And Zach kind of alluded to it too. Pardon my pop culture reference, but it's the Jerry Maguire, help me help you, right? We're providing legal a platform to help themselves and make themselves more efficient. And I was going to let you guys out of here, but Paul, you touched on it, and another question came in, and this is the question that I get asked more than anything around CLM. So hopefully you guys can add some color to this. What's the ROI? And how would a professional services firm actually measure the impact of CLM? Paul, you want to take that one first?
Sure. I mean, I kind of mentioned it previously. The one that comes to mind the fastest is, how quickly do you move through stages, right? So sales has control over, if you're using 6 stages, probably 4 of the 6, maybe 5 of the 6. One of those key ones is completely tied up in legal, right? Like it becomes a black hole when that contract goes out, and it's hard to say when it wrap up and can execute. So by putting this into that process timeline, that process flow within the system, it forces deal closure better. So as far as ROI, I'd be measuring just time to close from when it goes into contract review stage, and then if grading your legal team based on what that velocity looks like, it's directly impacting sales. If there's sort of like an intersect, I would see this as like legal ops or I don't know, something like rev ops, but legal and sales combined, because this is the revenue generating adjacent part of legal. It's very impactful to the bottom line. And yeah.
To add to this, guys, I was taught early in my career, like 3 levers of ROI: increase revenue, cost savings, time savings. Increase revenue, I'd look at what's our cycle times today, what's the value of reducing that, pulling revenue forward, even getting more contracts finalized. Increasing our renewal rate through better data is another metric to look at. Cost savings and we haven't talked too much, product today, but with the way Intellistack has approached this, it's an all-encompassing workflow. It includes digital signature. It includes document automation. Usually there's a licensing consolidation play here to drive some cost savings. So there may be a licensing cost savings relative to just vendor and tool consolidation. And then the time savings is looking at what we've talked about today. How do we make legal teams more effective? How do we make those resources more efficient in legal and operations and renewals and sales? And then kind of a cherry on top would just be like customer experience, how your customers interact, how they work through contracting with you, how you communicate with them ongoing. So I had one customer, describe that as like kind of improving our brand. And I'll throw that out just as the cherry on top. That's not necessarily ROI. I think you can make the ROI story without it, but also worth noting, you're just sharpening your operations when you engage in a project like this.
I totally agree. One thing we didn't really touch on as much as I feel like the value is there is just speed across the board, right? And then the context around it. So, even in my experience running the company, there's been situations where a client is working towards a change order, adding to their budget, increasing hours, and so forth. Everything moves quickly, and the quicker you can move on your end, the more likely that you can close that additional deal, that incremental value, incremental additional revenue, and so forth, build the project bookings and so forth. So the sooner you can generate a renewal, a change order, and so forth, and then enable the legal side to already have that context. Yes, I remember this contract going out. This was the back and forth. These were the issues and so forth. Like they have that context. Currently working in the, let me share this Google Docs link, download it as a Word doc, mark it up here. Now it's a Word 97 doc, and we're sending it back over to them, and there's formatting issues and yada, yada, yada. Like this just cuts all that BS, creates transparency. I mean, like I said, any way that you look at it, it's a no-brainer from my perspective.
Yeah, it's nuts, Paul. I mean, you talk about kind of the Word 97 doc, all the manual tracking. It's like we're Luddites, but it's December 2025, fellas. How are people still doing this? But you guys characterized that very well in your answer. I mean, Zach, you outlined 3 levers of ROI, and it sounds like we sweep it across the board, as well as the brand play. And as a brand marketer, I know the power of user and customer experience. Well, gentlemen, this was excellent. We could go all day. Thank you both for answering those questions. And for folks in the chat, if we didn't get to your question, we'll reach out directly with an answer to you. If you'd like to see how CLM could work for your firm, go find Zach at World Tour. He'll be on the floor. We can give some demos. We can schedule time with Paul. We'd love to talk to you. But
Easy
ahead,
to
Zach.
find me and Paul on LinkedIn. That's a natural. So send the
There we go.
LinkedIn
We'll
connect
throw up
mention.
Paul and Zach's LinkedIn in the show
mention.
notes. Yeah, again, thank you for joining us today. Many more conversations to come. Again, I could have kept you guys for 2 hours here, but I wanted to be sensitive to time. So thanks again, and we'll see you tomorrow at Agentforce World Tour in New York. And folks, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Zach. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Cheers, gentlemen.